When Google first announced their Google Home Max, they said that they set out to make the best sounding speaker and that they obsessed over the bass. And that's an understatement. This thing moves air out of the way like it's no one's business. The Google Home Max definitely sounds decent, but it's not for everyone. Google Home's lineup now consists of 3 first-party speakers, and there are a whole bunch of third-party speakers being released on what seems a weekly basis. Right now you can get the Google Home Mini for as low as $29, the OG Google Home for $79, and the Max is currently retailing for $399. Concerning what's inside the box when you get the Google Home Max, aside from the speaker itself, you also get a magnetic rubber pad, a power cord, and some documentation. That's it. But for a speaker that doesn't have a built-in battery, the Google Home Max is pretty freaking dense. The Max weighs in at almost 12 pounds, which honestly caught me off guard the first time I went to grab it. Inside, the Max is rocking dual 4.5-inch woofers and dual 0.7-inch tweeters. And the fabric that covers all of this on the front is pretty different from the fabrics found on the Home Mini and OG Google Home. The fabric on the Max is much thinner and less textured than the latter two. And underneath the fabric, there are your Google Assistant notification lights that change orientation depending on the speaker position and mostly shine white when Google is interacting with you. The rest of the body of the Max is made out of what I'm assuming is stainless steel, but if you're going to pick the Max up, I suggest you do so from the sides and avoid applying any kind of pressure on the front of the speaker. The front of the speaker isn't as sturdy and flexes very easily. On the top of the speaker, you've got your touch controls to raise or lower the volume of your music, and tapping the center will play or pause your music. And on the back, you've got your AC in port, an aux jack, a USB Type-C port, and a mic mute switch.
The mic's back on.
And the Google Home Max has a total of 6 mics built in, so it can listen for you or so it can automatically adjust its EQ for the best sound quality depending on where it is in a room. There are 2 microphones on the top, 2 on the side, and I'm assuming there are 2 underneath the fabric as well. But I just want to point something out really quick about the magnetic base on the Max. Yeah, the Google Home Max will tell you if you've oriented it incorrectly, and the pad will automatically align itself when you place it on either side. But what I really like about the pad is that it gives the illusion of the Max just levitating in mid-air, which I really like. The design of the Google Home Max is very clean and simple, just like the Mini, and they should have no problem fitting in with almost any room's decor. The OG Google Home also has a simple design, but you can really see Google is going in a new design direction with their newer smart speaker models, and it makes me wonder what the second generation Google Home will look like. Obviously, all 3 of these speakers do the same thing. They give you quick access to Google Assistant so you can ask it questions, give it commands, or control your smart home, and they all perform the same. They all hear you just as well, and they're all just as fast. Okay Google, what's the current price of Bitcoin?
1 BTC is approximately 16,265 United States dollars and 41 cents.
Hey Google, play music on the Max.
Alright, music from Google Play Music. Playing on the Max.
Oh yeah. Hey Google, pause. But the Google Home Max is all about sound, and it's obviously going to completely outperform the Mini and OG Google Home. But for fun, here's a sound test between these 3 speakers.
Too generous now to never help you out, 'cause I'm cleaning up your mess, I'm shoving my regrets. Become a little stronger now, a little stronger now.
What amazes me the most about the Google Home Max is the bass. This is a great speaker for bass heads. Even at 50% volume, the Max still manages to shake everything around it. There's a lot of emphasis on the low ends and highs, but I feel the mids and vocals are a little pushed back, and I feel the sound stage could be wider. The Max has no problem filling a large living room, and it likes to live in the mid-80s decibel range and occasionally gets into the low 90s at max volume. This speaker sounds its best all the way up to the 85% volume mark. Then after that, the highs will occasionally crash, but the real problem is if the bass really gets going, then there's going to be a lot of distortion and even a little bit of reverb. But through the Google Home app, you can adjust the amount of bass and treble the Max has. And although I do like the option of being able to adjust the bass and treble, I would have much rather preferred if Google gave you more control over the equalizer settings. But maybe through Google's smart sound and machine learning, they'll over time improve the sound of the Max, but more importantly push the mids a little forward. Because overall, the Google Home Max has a pretty V-shaped sound signature. And the Google Home Max gives you 3 options to listen to your music. You can either use the aux jack on the back, you can stream your music over Wi-Fi, or you can stream your music over Bluetooth straight from your own device. Hey Google, turn Bluetooth on.
Alright, looking for paired devices. Bluetooth is connected to iPhone.
But after testing the Max and watching videos with it, I did notice there was a significant delay between audio and video, which I'm finding is a pretty common problem with smart speakers. And since we're on the topic of sound quality, I just want to point out that the Google Home Mini is not good for listening to music whatsoever. It's tinny and everything just falls flat. But that's perfectly fine. The Google Home Mini is just a very affordable way to get started with Google Assistant. But the OG Google Home, on the other hand, is another story. Right now, it's selling for $79 because of the holiday season, but it typically retails for $129. And for a $129 speaker, the OG Google Home does not sound good. It gets overpowered by its own bass, and vocalists sound like they're at the bottom of a well. If you're looking for a smart speaker in the same price range that sounds good, then I highly recommend the JBL Link 10 or the JBL Link 20. They sound much better than the OG Google Home, they have a built-in battery, and they're very rugged, so you can take them outside if you're having a cookout or something. Right now, in its current state, I don't see a reason to go out and get an OG Google Home. It's not good for listening to music, and if you just want a smart speaker to interact with your assistant and help you control your smart home, then you'll be better off with just getting a Google Home Mini. And although the Google Home Max is just a supersized Google Home Mini with a very simple design, it's not without its problems. As mentioned before, you can adjust the volume by sliding your finger across the top of the speaker, and you can play or pause or silence alarms by tapping the center. But what I don't understand is why can't you control your music playback by double tapping or triple tapping the top to skip or go back a track? And I also don't understand why pressing and holding on the top doesn't activate Google Assistant like it does on the OG Google Home. I get that on the Google Home Mini, Google had to scrap the feature because of some hardware issues, but I don't think there's such a problem on the Max. I just find it irritating that Google limits the Max's functionality and forces you to use voice commands even when it's not the most convenient or if your phone isn't around. Because there is no reason Google couldn't add this functionality through a little software. Because when you're playing music at a higher volume, the Max is going to have trouble hearing you when you give it a command. So instead of double tapping to skip a track or pressing and holding to activate Google Assistant, you might have to either tap to pause the music and then give it the voice command, or you might have to lower the volume and then give it the voice command. These are needless extra steps. I get that Google is trying to, in a way, make talking to voice assistants second nature to people, but I feel smart speakers in general should give the user as many options as possible to interact with them and allow the user to use their hardware as they see fit. Because if voice assistants truly are as amazing as Google thinks they are, then people will naturally gravitate towards them. And this is coming from somebody who really enjoys using voice commands on a regular basis, specifically with my Google Home Mini and Xbox One. But one small thing I do appreciate about the Google Home Max is its power cord and how small the plug is. There's no external power brick to worry about with the Google Home Max, and those small plugs means you save room on your power strip for your other electronics. Because if you look at the plugs on the Mini and OG Google Home, you'll see how big of a difference the Max is. Again, for the second generation Google Home, I would really like to see them slim down the plug in addition to improving overall sound quality. So what's the verdict on the Google Home Max? If you want a good sounding speaker that sounds bigger than it is with Google Assistant built in, then the Max is your simplest and cleanest solution. Sure, you could get a Chromecast audio and hook it up to any speaker of your choice and get a Google Home Mini to handle all of the voice command stuff, but then that means 3 wires you have to keep plugged in and 2 potential network failure points. Because if potentially either the Mini or the Chromecast are having network issues, then you're gonna have to troubleshoot them. But like I mentioned earlier, there are more and more Google Assistant enabled speakers being announced and released on a weekly basis. One that I think is a direct comparison to the Google Home Max is the recently released JBL Link 500. If you decide to get the Google Home Max, you're not going to be disappointed because it does sound impressive for its size and it looks pretty good as well. But I do agree, I would wait for this thing to go on sale first. Hey, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It helps out more than you realize. For more product reviews and deal alerts, check out jimcaddy.net. If you want to support the channel, pick up a shirt. And I'll catch you next time.